The emerald canopy of Kepler 442b filtered the twin suns' light into dancing patterns across the research station's perimeter. Security Officer Ryan Vale adjusted his plasma rifle's weight against his shoulder, eyes scanning the tree line with practiced vigilance. 3 months of escort duty had taught him that the most dangerous moments often wore the mask of tranquility. "The bio readings are extraordinary," Ambassador Kestra Velinara murmured, her musical voice carrying the distinctive harmonic undertones of her species. She glided beside him on her hover platform, pale blue skin almost luminescent in the dappled sunlight. Her crimson curls caught the light like liquid fire, and Ryan found himself stealing glances despite his professional training. The Velethi were beautiful in an otherworldly way that made humans feel clumsy and crude by comparison. Kestra possessed an ethereal grace that seemed to bend reality around her, making even the simple act of data collection appear like a sacred ritual. Her delicate hands moved over her scanning device with the precision of a master artist. "Stay close to the perimeter," Ryan warned, noting how her scientific enthusiasm was drawing her toward the deeper forest. Command was clear about the biomech activity in this sector. Kestra's violet eyes met his briefly, a rarity that made his pulse quicken. Velathi rarely made direct eye contact with other species, considering it invasive. "Your concern is noted, Officer Vale. However, these readings suggest crystalline formations that could revolutionize our energy research." The formal distance in her tone stung more than it should have. 3 months of protection duty, and she still spoke to him like a stranger. He'd learned to read her subtle expressions, the way her shoulders tensed when she was excited about a discovery, how her fingers trembled slightly when she was nervous. But she remained an enigma wrapped in diplomatic protocol. A low rumble echoed through the forest, causing both of them to freeze. Ryan's combat training kicked in instantly, his body shifting into a defensive stance. That's not natural. The attack came from 3 directions simultaneously. Biomechanical creatures, part machine, part organic nightmare, burst from the undergrowth with metallic shrieks. Their chrome carapaces gleamed as they moved within human speed optical sensors, locked onto their targets. "Get down," Ryan shouted, opening fire with his plasma rifle. The energy bolts struck the lid biomech, sending it crashing into a massive tree trunk. But 2 more emerged from behind it, their razor-sharp limbs extended. Kestra's hover platform lurched as she tried to evade, but the sudden movement destabilized her position. A biomech's energy pulse struck the platform's propulsion system, sending sparks cascading as it tilted dangerously. "Ambassador!" Ryan spun toward her, his heart slamming against his ribs. The platform gave way completely, and Kestra tumbled toward the forest floor. But worse, the biomech attack had destabilized the cliff face. Cracks spiderwebbed across the rocky ground as an entire section began to collapse into the ravine below. Time slowed. Ryan saw Kestra falling, her eyes wide with terror, her hand reaching out instinctively. Without thought, without hesitation, he dove forward. His fingers found hers just as the ground gave way beneath her feet. Their hands locked together, and Ryan pulled with every ounce of strength he possessed, hauling her back from the crumbling edge. They tumbled onto solid ground, their bodies pressed together as debris rained down around them. "Are you hurt?" he gasped, still holding her hand. Kestra stared at him with an expression he couldn't read: wonder, fear, and something else entirely. "Ryan," she whispered, and for the first time, she spoke his name without his title. Neither of them realized that everything had just changed forever. The Velathi encampment materialized around them like a living organism of crystalline structures and flowing energy. Ryan had never been inside their temporary settlement before. Humans were typically restricted to the outer diplomatic zones. Now, flanked by two towering Velothi guards with their characteristic pale blue skin and ceremonial armor, he understood why God everything here pulsed with an otherworldly beauty that made his human senses feel inadequate. Bioluminescent vines wove between translucent dwelling pods, and the air itself seemed to shimmer with microscopic particles that responded to the Velathi's presence. Officer Vale, Commander Thane Mordoon's voice carried the weight of centuries. The elderly Velathis. Silver hair flowed like liquid mercury, and his violet eyes held depths that seemed to pierce through Ryan's soul. "Do you understand what you have done?" "I saved her life," Ryan replied, confusion edging his voice. "If that's somehow against your protocols? Thane's laugh was like crystal bells breaking. "Young human, you have initiated the Kethmara, the sacred binding. In our culture, to grasp another's hand during mortal peril is the deepest form of consent, a declaration that you choose to bind your soul to theirs for eternity." The words hit Ryan like a physical blow. "That's impossible. It was instinct. I couldn't let her fall." "Instinct," Thane mused, studying him with unsettling intensity. "Perhaps. But the Kethmara recognizes no distinction between conscious choice and the call of the heart. The bond has begun." Through the translucent walls of the chamber, Ryan could see Kestra in an adjacent pod, surrounded by other Velothi women. Their hands moved in graceful patterns around her, some kind of ritual or examination. Even at this distance, he felt a strange pull toward her, as if an invisible thread connected them. "Where is she?" he demanded. "I need to explain." "Explain what? That you wish to undo what cannot be undone?" Thane's expression softened slightly. "The ambassador faces a choice, as do you. The bond can be rejected, but only if both parties agree within the first 7 cycles. After that, ... he shrugged eloquently. 7 cycles? 7 of your days. But know this, human rejection of the Kethmara after it has begun is traumatic. For both participants. That night, confined to a guest pod that felt more like a beautiful prison, Ryan experienced his first taste of the bond's power. He was lying on the bioluminescent sleeping platform when it began a gentle pressure at the edges of his consciousness, like someone softly knocking on a door he didn't know existed. Images flooded his mind. Kestra as a child, her crimson hair flowing as she danced in gardens of living crystal. Her fear during diplomatic training, the weight of representing her people pressing down on her shoulders. Her loneliness among the stars, surrounded by duty, but starved for genuine connection. And underneath it all, a warmth that felt like coming home. He jolted awake, heart pounding, only to find Kestra standing in the doorway of his pod. She wore a flowing garment that seemed woven from starlight itself, and her eyes held the same bewildered wonder he felt. "You felt it too," she whispered. Stepping closer, the sharing, "Your memories," he breathed. I felt what you felt." She nodded, her fingers absently rubbing the palm where he'd grasped her. "The elders say it will only grow stronger. Soon we will share not just memories, but emotions, thoughts, even physical sensations." "Kestra, I never meant—" "I know." She moved closer, and he could smell the exotic fragrance that clung to her skin like alien flowers and distant rain. "That's what terrifies me most. It wasn't calculated or political. It was pure, instinctive compassion. We can reject it," he said, though the words tasted bitter. Thane explained the process. Her laugh was hollow. "Can we? When I close my eyes, I feel your heartbeat as if it were my own. When you're afraid, my hands tremble. How do you reject something that feels like it was always meant to be?" She reached out tentatively, her fingertips hovering inches from his cheek. "May I?" The question hung between them, loaded with implications neither fully understood. Ryan nodded, and when her cool fingers touched his skin, the sensation was electric. Not painful, but overwhelming, as if every nerve ending had suddenly come alive. Through the touch, he felt her turmoil, duty warring with desire, fear tangled with fascination, and beneath it all, a growing certainty that frightened them both. 6 more days, she whispered, her hand still against his face. 6 more days, he agreed, knowing that the countdown had already become meaningless. The bond was no longer a choice to be made, but a tide pulling them toward an inevitable shore. The 3rd day brought dreams that weren't dreams. Ryan found himself standing in Kestra's childhood home on Velothi Prime, watching through her eyes as she learned the intricate courtship dances of her people. The memory was so vivid he could feel the cool marble beneath her feet, smell the incense that burned in the ceremonial braziers. But layered beneath her recollection was his own presence, an alien warmth that didn't belong in the memory, yet felt completely natural. He woke to find her sitting beside his sleeping platform, her violet eyes reflecting the pod's soft bioluminescence. "You were there," she said softly. "In my past, I felt you experiencing it with me." "The bond is accelerating," he replied, sitting up carefully. The simple movement sent ripples of shared sensation between them, his muscles stretching, her sympathetic response. Yesterday, it was just memories. Now we're truly beginning to merge. She stood gracefully, her movement causing an echo of motion to course through his nervous system. The elders are not concerned. They've never seen a Kethmara progress this rapidly between different species. Ryan studied her face, noting the subtle signs of exhaustion around her eyes. "You're not sleeping. Neither are you. How can I sleep when your restlessness keeps me awake? How can you rest when my anxiety fills your chest like a weight?" She was right. The past 2 nights had been an endless cycle of shared insomnia, each feeding off the other's emotional state. But there was something else, something neither of them had spoken aloud, a growing physical awareness that made every accidental touch feel like lightning. "The rejection ceremony," he said quietly. "Have you decided?" Kestra's hands trembled slightly, a tremor he felt in his own fingers. "Have you?" Instead of answering, he stood and moved to the pod's observation window. The Velothi encampment spread out below them, its inhabitants moving with that characteristic fluid grace. Some paused to look up at their pod, their expressions ranging from curiosity to disapproval. "What happens if we don't reject it?" he asked. "Complete telepathic fusion within a lunar cycle. We become 2 bodies sharing one consciousness." Her voice carried both wonder and terror. In Velothi culture, it's considered the highest form of love to know another being so completely that the boundaries between self and other dissolve. "And if we do reject it?" "Severing an active Kethmara is like tearing away part of your soul." She joined him at the window, careful not to touch. "The survivors describe it as a wound that never fully heals, a constant sense of incompleteness." They stood in silence, watching the alien sunset paint the sky in shades of violet and gold. The beauty of it moved through both of them simultaneously, their shared appreciation creating a feedback loop of aesthetic pleasure that was almost overwhelming. "Kestra," he said finally, "I need to tell you something." She turned to face him, and he could feel her pulse quickening through their connection. "I've been fighting this bond, trying to maintain some sense of independence. But the truth is," he met her eyes, letting her see the vulnerability he'd been hiding, "I was attracted to you long before the rescue. 3 months of escort duty, watching you work, seeing your passion for discovery, your dedication to peace between our species. I was half in love with you already." The admission hit her like a physical blow. Through their bond, he felt her surprise, her relief, and beneath it all, a blooming warmth that made his heart race. "You are so distant," she whispered, "so professional." I thought you found me ... alien, untouchable. I was trying to maintain boundaries. It's what I was trained to do." He stepped closer, drawn by the pull he could no longer deny. "But now there are no boundaries left, are there?" "None," she agreed, her voice barely audible, when she reached. For him this time, there was no hesitation. Their fingers intertwined, and the sensation was like completing a circuit energy flowing between them in ways that transcended the physical. He could feel her heartbeat synchronizing with her breathing matching his rhythm. "Show me," she whispered against his ear, her breath sending shivers through both their bodies. "Show me what you felt that day, what you really felt when you saved me." The memory unfolded between them, his terror at seeing her fall, the desperate strength that had flooded his muscles, the moment of relief when he pulled her to safety. But now she experienced it from his perspective, felt his protective instincts, his fierce need to keep her safe, the way holding her hand had felt like the most natural thing in the universe. "And this is what I felt," she whispered back, sharing her own memory of that moment. Her gratitude, yes, but also the shock of recognition, as if she'd been waiting her entire life for someone to reach for her with such desperate, selfless love. Their lips met in a kiss that existed on multiple levels: physical, emotional, telepathic. Through their bond, each sensation was doubled, reflected back and forth between them until they could no longer tell where one ended and the other began. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard, their shared arousal a palpable force in the small space. "4 more days," Kestra said, but her voice held no uncertainty. No, Ryan replied, pulling her closer. "We're already bound. The ceremony would just be a formality." She smiled, the first truly radiant expression he'd seen from her, and he felt her joy as if it were his own. The diplomatic crisis erupted on the 4th morning like a plasma storm across the encampment. Ryan woke to find Kestra's distress flooding through their bond before he was even fully conscious, a mixture of anger, frustration, and something that felt like betrayal. Commander Thane Mordaunt stood in the center of their pod, flanked by both Belathi officials and human diplomatic staff. The tension in the room was thick enough to taste, and through his connection to Kestra, Ryan could feel the political currents swirling around them like a hurricane. "The Earth Colonial Council has lodged a formal protest," announced Director Harrison Webb, a stern-faced man whose disapproval radiated from every pore. "They consider this bonding to be a violation of Officer Vale's human rights, an alien form of coercion." "Coercion?" Kestra's voice carried dangerous harmonics that made the air itself seem to vibrate. "The Kethmara cannot be forced. It emerges only from genuine emotional resonance." "That's not how Earth sees it," Webb replied coldly. "They're demanding Vale's immediate return for psychological evaluation and treatment to reverse this contamination." The word hit both Ryan and Kestra like a physical blow. Through their bond, he felt her pain as if it were his own, the centuries of prejudice her people had faced, the constant need to prove their worth to suspicious human authorities. "I'm not contaminated," Ryan said, standing to face the assembled officials. "And I'm not a victim. I'm a grown man capable of making my own choices. Are you?" Thane's ancient eyes fixed on him with laser intensity. "Or are you being influenced by alien telepathic manipulation? How can you be certain your feelings are your own when your mind is no longer entirely human?" The question cut deeper than any blade. In the past days, as their bond had deepened, Ryan had begun to wonder the same thing. Where did his thoughts end and Kestra's begin? Was his growing love for her genuine, or was it manufactured by the telepathic connection? Through their bond, he felt Kestra's sudden spike of fear. She was wondering the same thing about her own feelings. "We need time," he said finally. "Time to understand what's happening to us without political pressure from either side." Time is what you don't have, Webb replied. The transport ship arrives in 6 hours. Earth's orders are non-negotiable, and the Velathi Council has decided that the Kethmara must be rejected. Thane added with visible reluctance. The political implications of a human-Velathi bond are too complex for our current treaty negotiations. Kestra's despair hit Ryan like a tidal wave, nearly driving him to his knees. Through their connection, he experienced her sense of helplessness, her fury at being treated like a political pawn, rather than a sentient being with the right to choose her own destiny. "Get out," he said quietly. "Excuse me?" Webb's eyebrows rose. "Get out!" The force of his emotion, amplified by Kestra's matching rage, sent both humans and Velathi scrambling for the pod's exit. Only Thane remained, his expression unreadable. "You have until sunset," the elder said softly. "After that, the choice will be made for you." When they were alone, Kestra collapsed onto the sleeping platform, her composure finally cracking. Ryan moved to her side as she melted into his arms, her tears wet against his chest. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry you're being forced into this." "Hey," he tilted her chin up, meeting her eyes. "Nobody's forcing me into anything. The bond might have brought us together, but what I feel for you—" He paused, searching for words. "Kestra, I would choose you even without the Kethmara. Bond or no bond, you're the most remarkable person I've ever met." She searched his face, and through their connection, he opened himself completely to her scrutiny. Let her see his memories of their time together, his admiration for her intelligence and dedication, his desire to protect not just her body, but her dreams and ambitions. "And you're the first person who ever saw me as more than just a diplomatic tool," she replied, her own memories flowing to him. Her loneliness among the stars, the constant weight of representing her entire species, the way his genuine care and respect had been like water in a desert. "So what do we do?" he asked. Instead of answering immediately, she stood and moved to the pod's center, where a small altar-like structure had been placed. Her hands moved over its crystalline surface, and it began to glow with soft, pulsing light. "This is a Kethful," she explained, "a bonding shrine. If we choose to complete the Kethmara tonight, we can do it here in private before they separate us. And if we do, then nothing our governments decide will matter. The bond will be absolute, permanent. They can exile us, imprison us, even try to kill us, but they cannot unmake what we become." Ryan stared at the shrine, understanding the magnitude of what she was offering. Not just love, but revolution. Not just partnership, but the complete transformation of everything he'd ever been. "Kestra," he said carefully, "I need to know that this is really what you want. Not what the bond is making you want, but what you, the essential you, truly desires." She was quiet for a long moment, her hand resting on the shrine's surface. When she finally spoke, her voice carried absolute certainty. "The bond didn't create my feelings, Ryan. It only made it impossible to hide them." She turned to face him, her eyes blazing with determination. "I choose you. I choose us. I choose this impossible, beautiful, terrifying thing we found together." He crossed to her, his decision crystallizing with each step. When he placed his hand beside hers on the shrine, the crystalline structure erupted in brilliant light, and their bond exploded into something transcendent. This time, when they kissed, the universe itself seemed to bend around them. The bonding ceremony began at sunset, with only the stars as witnesses to their transformation. Kestra had explained the process in whispers as they prepared. The Kethmara completion was not merely a ritual, but a fundamental alteration of consciousness itself. Two separate beings would enter the shrine's embrace, and something new still them, yet more than them, would emerge. "Are you afraid?" she asked as they knelt facing each other within the shrine's glowing embrace. Terrified, Ryan admitted, then smiled. But not of losing myself, of finding out who I really am when I'm complete. The crystalline structure around them pulsed with increasing intensity, responding to their shared emotional state. Through their existing bond, Ryan could feel Kestra's mixture of anticipation and reverence. This was sacred to her people, a joining that transcended the merely physical or emotional. Place your hands on mine, she instructed, her voice taking on the ceremonial cadences of her ancestors. And open your mind completely. Hold nothing back. When their palms met, the universe exploded. Every barrier between them dissolved instantly. Ryan felt himself expanding, his consciousness stretching to encompass not just his own thoughts and memories, but Kestra's as well. Her childhood on Galactic Prime became his childhood, her first glimpse of the stars, his first glimpse. Her fears were his fears, her hopes his hopes, her love his love. But rather than losing himself in the flood of her experiences, he felt more authentically himself than ever before. It was as if he'd been living his entire life with only half a soul, and now, finally, he was complete. Through their joined consciousness, he experienced her parallel revelation. She was still entirely herself, her wit, her intelligence, her passionate dedication to her people. But now she was also him. His protective instincts became her protective instincts, his quiet strength, her quiet strength. They were two, and they were one, and somehow both states existed simultaneously without contradiction. The shrine's light reached crescendo, and, in that moment of perfect unity, they shared something beyond telepathy, beyond empathy. They shared existence itself. Every sensation was doubled, every emotion amplified, every thought harmonized with its perfect counterpart. When the light finally faded, they remained kneeling, foreheads touching, breathing in perfect synchronization. But they were no longer the same beings who had entered the shrine. "How do you feel?" Kestra whispered, though she already knew the answer through their connection. "Like I've been blind my whole life and can finally see," he replied, his words emerging in harmony with her own thoughts. The pod's entrance chimed, and they looked up to find Commander Thane standing in the doorway. His ancient eyes widened as he took in their transformed state, the way they moved as one being in two bodies, the visible energy that crackled between them. "It's too late," he said, but his voice carried wonder rather than condemnation. "The Kethmara is complete." "Yes," they said in unison, their voices creating harmonics that made the air itself seem to sing. "The political ramifications will be what they will be," Kestra interrupted, though her words carried Ryan's absolute certainty. "We've made our choice, Commander. Now others must make theirs." Over the following hours, as word of their completed bonding spread through both human and Velothi communities, the crisis they'd expected began to materialize. Director Webb arrived with a security team, demanding Ryan's extraction. The Velothi Council convened an emergency session, debating whether to exile Kestra for her transgression. But something unexpected happened. As they faced the storm of political opposition together, their bond became a beacon of possibility rather than a source of conflict. Young Velothi, who had felt constrained by ancient traditions, saw in their love a path to greater freedom. Humans who had feared alien influence witnessed instead a joining that made both partners more authentically themselves than they had ever been alone. "You've started something," Thane observed during one of his private visits. "The younger generation of both species are calling for expanded cultural exchange programs, for the possibility of future Kethmara bonds." "Change always begins with individuals willing to take the risk," Ryan replied, his arm around Kestra's waist. Through their bond, they were constantly aware of each other's presence, each other's needs, each other's joy in their shared existence. "And sometimes," Kestra added, The universe conspires to bring together exactly the right people at exactly the right moment. That night, as they lay together in the bioluminescent glow of their pod, they made love with a completeness that transcended the physical. Every touch was felt by both, every kiss shared between two hearts that beat as one. In their union, they discovered new dimensions of intimacy, not just the joining of bodies, but the melding of souls. No regrets? Kestra whispered as they held each other in the afterglow, their consciousness still intertwined. Only one, Ryan replied, pressing a kiss to her temple. That it took a crisis to bring us together. Perhaps that's how the universe works, she mused, her fingers tracing patterns on his chest. Perhaps love always requires a leap of faith. 6 months later, they stood before the joint Human Velothi Council as the first official ambassadors of interspecies bonding. Their success had paved the way for cultural exchange programs, for revised treaties that recognized the rights of bonded pairs, for a future where love could transcend the boundaries of species. The Kethmara is not mind control, Kestra explained. To the assembled delegates, her words carrying Ryan's conviction. It's the recognition that consciousness itself is meant to be shared, that we are all stronger when we allow ourselves to be truly known by another. It's the discovery that love multiplies rather than divides, Ryan added, his voice harmonizing with hers. That in becoming part of something larger than ourselves, we become more authentically who we were always meant to be. As they spoke, their bond radiated outward like ripples in a pond, touching the minds and hearts of everyone present. For a moment, the entire council chamber was filled with the echo of their perfect unity, a glimpse of what the future might hold when barriers finally fell. Later, alone in their quarters aboard the new joint research station, they stood together at the observation deck, watching the stars wheel overhead. Through their bond, they shared the profound peace that came from being exactly where they belonged, with exactly the right person. Ready for the next adventure? Kestra asked, her hand finding his with the automatic precision of two parts of a whole. With you? Always, Ryan replied, and in their joined consciousness, they felt the infinite possibilities spreading out before them like stars. They had begun as strangers thrown together by duty and circumstance. They had become something new, a bridge between worlds, a testament to the power of love to transcend every boundary, a living proof that sometimes the universe's greatest gifts come disguised as accidents. And in the joining of their hearts, they had discovered that the most profound truth of all, we are never truly alone if we are brave enough to reach for another's hand.